This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines and the top stories we're tracking on the show. First up, Bangladesh interim government advisor Muhammad Yunus calls for China's expansion in India's northeast. Yunus calls India's northeast states as landlocked. How will India respond to Dhaka's whale threat on the eve of BIMSTEC? Does this send a message about the India-Bangladesh relationship? We evaluate. India-China marks 75 years of diplomatic ties. Ties should take form of elephant-dragon tango. That's the word coming in from Xi Jinping. Donald Trump's April 2nd Liberation Day tariffs near. How will India brace for fresh tariff salvo from Donald Trump? We decode. Bangkok high-rise collapse. NDTV World on ground zero, getting you all the latest updates as death toll now mounts to 18. Rescue efforts intensify. Chinese nationals handed suspended jail terms in a case of complete negligence on part of Chinese authorities. Australia and the UK hike visa fees by up to 13%. The hike targets Indian students and workers. Will this make it tougher, costlier for these geographies? We get you all those details. Top story on the show this week. Bangladesh interim government advisor Muhammad Yunus has once again come out with provocative statements. One may wonder, why is it that he's issuing whale threats to India, and in fact has commented on India's northeastern states, appealed to China to extend in the region. Muhammad Yunus was on his first bilateral visit to China. He spent 4 days there. And the one big thing that came out from there is that he asked Beijing to make an extension, saying that the 7 sister states are landlocked by Bangladesh to its west. What does this threat signify? Is he looking at some sort of a veiled threat to India? Does it mean that China will now have more access to the region? We're going to evaluate all of that. But first up, listen in to what Muhammad Yunus said yesterday while talking to representatives from Beijing.
7 states of India, eastern part of India, called 7 sisters. They are landlocked country, landlocked region of India. They have no way to reach out to the ocean. We are the only guardian of the ocean for all this region. So this opens up a huge possibility. So this could be an extension of the Chinese economy, build things, produce things, market things, bring things to China, bring it out to the whole rest of the world.
All right, I'm going to now put forth those big questions that we are asking on India Global today. The shocking China pitch that Muhammad Yunus is making. First up, is Yunus now making a very clear and a veiled threat to India when he's talking about the 7 northeastern states? Next question, how should India really respond to Dhaka's threats? They're almost not veiled if you ask. It's very clear that he wants more Chinese presence there. Next question, Bangladesh-China bonhomie. Is this now a growing and alleged concern for India to handle? And lastly, how will Yunus's possible Pakistan visit impact India? Remember, they've exchanged not just Eid greetings, but a possibility of Yunus going to Pakistan on his next state visit. What does this add up to? What can be India's response? Let's get in Muqtadir Rashid, who's a senior journalist from Bangladesh, Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, joining me on the broadcast. In fact, let me give the first word to Veena Sikri, which is that it's not just an isolated incident here. There are 2 very important things. One, Muhammad Yunus has said that, and in no uncertain terms, he wants greater Chinese presence in India's backyard, coming at a time when he is wanting to now have more than just friendly overtures with Pakistan. His next visit may very well possibly be to Pakistan, taking Shahbaz Sharif's invitation. How do you read this and connect the dots for us?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to realize that the present regime of Muhammad Yunus is not a legitimate government. It's not, it doesn't have any constitutional position. It is there only as a passing phase. There are going to be elections very soon. And the people of Bangladesh are clamoring, all the political parties are asking more and more for very quick, free, fair, and inclusive elections. So this is something that we have to keep in mind, that it's not that something you need to react to on an everyday basis, because this government is not there for all time. It's, you know, and in fact, the more that
But
the
no one knows how long
party,
it's there, ma'am. No one knows how long it's there.
yeah, but the more and more that the Islamist parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Hifazat-e-Islam and the Islami Anadolu in Bangladesh, the more that they are exerting their pressure on Muhammad Yunus, the more the people of Bangladesh are reacting adversely, and they are asking for quicker elections, number one. Number two, coming to the specific statement that has been made in China, I think, first of all, the overall visit of Muhammad Yunus to China did not go very well at all. He did not get any of the big promises that he was hoping to get from China. And even the joint statement doesn't have any big announcements. It has just been a normal routine visit. And now he's trying to incite people of the Chinese businessmen to whom he was addressing to come to Bangladesh. Now, when he's doing that, he has the temerity to talk about access to Northeast Indian states. These are legitimate sovereign parts of India. You cannot offer access to China to them as an extension of the economy without consulting India at all. So this is the completely unacceptable part. And I have to say no more than to say that all the Northeastern states have unanimously reacted in a furious way to this statement by Dr. Muhammad Yunus. We've had the statement by the Chief Minister of
Rashid,
Assam.
Respond to that. There are voices coming in from Tripura saying, why not break Bangladesh instead? Because who is Bangladesh to go about talking about India's northeastern states?
Exactly. We've had even the TTC.
Yeah, I don't want to take it a very...
Let's get in a word from Muqtadir. Yeah.
I don't want to say it in a very negative manner because there are possibility for the Seven Sister through Bangladesh, and of course the Chittagong port and the Mongla port, which is connected direct to the Seven Sister. And we have lots of potential and share interest of both sides, I mean, for the Seven Sister to Bangladesh. And that could be the possibility. And I don't want to take a very, in a negative way, this proposal, that if that there is a Chinese investment in Bangladesh and Seven Sisters, the countries of Seven Sisters can get, the states of Seven Sisters can get benefit out of it. I don't find anything negative, but the issue is, I'm coming to the point.
Muqtadir, I'm going to give you all the time. And there's a reason why I invite you on the show is because I consider you to be open to reason, at least some amount, right? So my question is very simple, which is your leader has gone to China to evaluate Chinese investment opportunities inside Bangladesh. Where exactly does India figure in this? Talk about Dhaka, talk about Beijing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm coming to. The problem is that China and India sometimes don't understand the people's will of Bangladesh. In past, we have seen that China, the country who backed Hasina for a longer period of time. And eventually, India followed the rule. And they also go with the Sheikh Hasina. And it didn't work well. So first, we need an electoral government which will have people's mandate to decide what kind of relation we need with China, we need with Pakistan, or we need with India. But current government, the Yunus government is trying to, somewhat incite India.
But none of that is stopping Muhammad Yunus to undertake state visit after state visit, make statement after statement, which are provocative in nature.
Yes, just try to incite India.
Why? What do you think could be the objective?
I don't know, because he wants to stay power for a longer period of time, I guess. Because his press secretary, Shafiqul Alam,
Islamists are, and the radical elements in Bangladesh.
I'm not saying the Islamists or the radical element, but I would say the Shafiqul Alam.
No, who will like anti-India statements, Muqtadir, tell me? Muhammad Yunus wants to stay in power. He's making anti-India statements. Who will benefit? Who wants those statements?
Maybe many leftists give anti-Indian statement. That's the different thing.
Veena Sikri.
But what Let me finish.
Sure.
What happened with Shafiqul Alam, the press secretary to Dr. Yunus? He shared a post yesterday that one of the Facebook user wrote that they want Yunus for 5 years. What does it mean? We are really.
It means there are no elections happening in your country anytime soon, sir. Unfortunately, that's what it means. Meena Sikri, respond to that.
I think this is what the Muhammad Yunus regime wants. They want no elections. They want to stay on in power. They're talking of reforms, which is not even the mandate of an interim regime. They have to just hold elections and go. That's it. And in fact, I don't think they're even qualified to play the role of a caretaker regime. They're not qualified for that because they're not neutral. They have political parties in them. That's all. But let me come back to the talking about, to discuss what Muhammad Yunus said in China. I think it's very, very provocative and condemnable that Muhammad Yunus talked about being the guardian of the seven sisters, the northeast states of India, access to the Indian Ocean. I think he is trying to rebut and refute all the agreements between the governments of India and Bangladesh on access to Chittagong port through Tripura, through the bridge on the river Feni, on access to Mongla port and the riverine transport through Bangladesh to Zakiganj in the northeast. So all these, if he is trying to refute, then he cannot expect that from India he will get any rights of a lower riparian if he's going to break all agreements like this. And the second part of his statement, I must tell you, he spoke about telling the Chinese businessmen, oh, there's so much power, electricity in Nepal, there's so much electricity generated in Bhutan, and please come to China, it'll come. How will it come to Bangladesh except through Indian territory? And on the one hand, you want to talk about, attack India's sovereignty and talk about offering the northeastern states as an extension of the Chinese economy.
Exactly.
And on the other, you want India
Meena Sikri, I'm running out of time. Muqtadir Rashid, I want to ask this final question to you, which is that there is an invitation on the table from Shahbaz Sharif for Muhammad Yunus. Now, after a state visit to China, if he goes and undertakes the state visit to Pakistan with absolutely no thawing of relations between India and Bangladesh, what kind of a message is Muhammad Yunus sending to India?
It's a different phenomena for Dr. Yunus, but I don't think he wants to spend time with this kind of a state visit so that the people will say, the populist people will say like, oh, they see how powerful Dr. Muhammad Yunus is. But we don't want to go for any kind of binary, whether we need India or China. We shouldn't do that. Even in Pakistan, I spoke to so many Pakistani friends. They don't want this kind of relation. They want to very reciprocate and respectful relation. We also want to, very mutually respectful relation with Pakistan, with India, with China. We should not make enemy for others. We don't want to play the Kautilya's theory. We should have our own kind of narrative. We should have our own kind of...
I gave you all the time on the show only out of fairness, but I have a difference of opinion on this.
Please.
Given the fact that the statements that have come in have been so provocative, so vile, so one-sided. I don't think this business of having equal ties with all stakeholders is really going to work out. I'm going to wrap this right here. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today on India Global. Bottom line, viewers, is that on the eve of the BIMSTEC summit, there have been multiple overtures made by Muhammad Yunus to meet Prime Minister Modi. But how can that meeting take place when there are provocative statements that are coming in from the Bangladeshi side, in fact, bringing in India's sovereignty, India's northeastern states? They are at the heart of how India and Bangladesh relationship will progress from here on. Provocative statements challenging India's sovereignty is not going to get in Muhammad Yunus any further in terms of thawing of relationships and moving forward with India. On that note, viewers, I'm going to slip into a very short break, come back with more on the other side. Stay with us.
Because your brain really matters.
The neighborhood that we are in right now, you take what's happening around us, whether it's Bangladesh or some other countries, there are violent revolutions that are taking place, all in an effort towards democracy. How do you view that, especially in the context of Bhutan's history being completely opposite of that, and you have the advantage of history, apart from, of course, leadership lessons?
So this is exactly the point I've been trying to make, and especially to our own people. Let's treasure what we have, and especially to the youth of Bhutan. In our region, whether it's India, Bangladesh, you just mentioned, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan. Some places don't even have democracy yet. But wherever there's democracy, even in India, it was a product of bloodshed, of sacrifice, of revolution. In Bhutan, it was a product of enlightened leaders imposing it on a reluctant people in a time of peace and prosperity, unprecedented stability. And this makes Bhutanese democracy, Bhutan's democracy, absolutely unique.
Absolutely, sir, it does. Which brings me to ask you about the fact that many people around the world feel that there are Western leadership styles and then there are, Asian or... On India Global, I now turn to probably one of the most devastating stories that NDTV World has been on top of. Roughly 4 days since a massive earthquake shook Myanmar and Thailand, the region is still reeling from the impact. While the situation in Bangkok is now returning to normalcy, Myanmar is still struggling to cope with the rising death toll, which has already crossed 2,700 people. While the junta's continued airstrikes is hindering relief efforts. In Thailand's Bangkok, 18 people have died after a skyscraper crumbled. The government has announced a probe into the collapse and the reasons for that collapse, which was built by a Chinese company and a long-established Thai construction firm in collaboration. Was it poor quality? Was it just Chinese company not following due process? Let's get in my colleague Vishal Vivek, who's been on top of that story, getting us all the details and really bringing us minute-by-minute update. Vishal, tell us, what is it that you know about the latest as far as that, tower collapse is concerned?
So the situation here is pretty intense right now. The authorities, as you can see right behind me, are going at it. They are picking apart the rubble that you see in the distance, not too far from me. It's about 3 to 4 story high now. The rubble was at least 4 story high yesterday. They have reduced the size of the rubble, overall rubble, and in the last few hours, they have sped up the whole process. That indicates that they are not really looking for live people inside. They have not told that on record, but off the record, many personnel have been telling me in the last 2 days that they don't see anyone surviving this catastrophe that it is. But you can see that in the last 24 hours, they have brought in this new equipment. There are at least 3 to 4 10 to 12 story high cranes. I would request my camera person Rohit Vishwakarma to pan on those cranes particularly that were brought in today. And they have been going at it. They have particularly concentrated on the top of the rubble to pick the rubble apart and try to find the bodies. Authorities earlier told the media here that they were trying to concentrate on the top of the rubble because they had located at least 10 to 12 bodies there. But so far, they have not been able to extract most of those bodies because they are not able to get to them. It's almost impossible to get to them because it's too risky for the rescue workers to go inside that rubble. They tried that yesterday, but that didn't work out. And it's very, this whole zone is quite risky. They've used sniffer dogs. They've used drones used by the US Army. They've used Israeli technology. They have the tech at their disposal. They have the personnel at their disposal, but it's really difficult for them because an event of this magnitude, it's really hard to control. And Gaurie, that is what is happening. And as far as the Chinese angle is concerned, that probe is also going on. There are 2 different probes going on at the moment. 2 different high-level committees have been made. And just a few moments ago, those 4 nationals who were caught stealing some documents yesterday, 2 days ago actually, they have been given a suspended sentence. That actually means they have been given scot-free and they have just to pay about 3,000 bahts for their freedom. So that angle will have to be explored as to did they not do something to be charged for a crime with. So that will have to be explored.
All right, we leave it there. Vishal Vivek doing a fab job of getting us all those minute-by-minute details. And stay safe, Vishal, there, reporting live from Bangkok. On that note, shifting focus now to the other important story, the UK and Australia have now are all set to increase visa fees for Indian nationals by 13% come April. And in fact, this will impact student as well as work visas and visitor visas, causing potential financial strain and altering migration trends as well. The fee hike is not insignificant. It will have an impact on bilateral ties as well, because it is going to have an impact on people-to-people relationships, whether it's the student community, whether it's the skilled workers, all of them are likely to be impacted. I'm going to now get in an expert to understand the scale at which this is now going to have an impact in terms of the trends of people exploring these avenues. Prashant Ajmera, who's an immigration expert and also a lawyer, joins me to talk more on this. Prashant, now, is this a bit of a shocker that's come in? 13% is a very significant hike in visa fees, isn't it?
Yes, it is very high. Definitely it is high. Everybody is going to pay for it. It will affect every class of it. But also we have to realize it that these Western governments, whether it's a UK, Australia, even Canada or USA, they do this one on a regular basis to be in line with the inflation. And when the hike comes up, obviously those who are in the pipeline or just before that, they pay the higher fees, and it's going to affect them. Similarly, it's going to affect them with the student visa fees as well, because also you have to realize in the Western countries that their cuts are given to their Department of Education. The Department of Education cannot give enough grants to the education institute, and they depend on the international students. So
and international students actually form a very large chunk, both for the UK as well as Australian universities, and India forming probably one of the largest chunks, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
How much will that impact students evaluating these geographies?
Definitely it will affect when you are just taking a loan from the bank, and then you say, okay, I made my investment, the loan of £9,000 for in England, say, for example. Now you have to struggle and say that, okay, no, not £9,000, I needed £11,000. So those who are on a borderline is going to be affected. They have to make an arrangement or an extra or additional arrangement for their educations. So it will definitely affect them. But also people has to realize that this is not coming for the first time. I've been in a practice for almost 32 years. And this comes every 2 years or 3 years, they regularly to be in line with the inflation. So the visa fees also increases, and at the same time,
it may not be the first time ever, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that's going to have a financial hit, right? It's going to have a major hit. Explain to me also the hit that it's going to take in terms of those evaluating this for travel purposes, just, tourism, travel, those wanting to go for their family visits. That chunk of people will definitely be impacted the most.
Yes, definitely it will affect. But when you are traveling abroad, people say that, okay, when you are making a foreign trip, if it is coming up 10-15% more or a few thousand rupees more, you can afford it. And people don't say anything about it, and they just travel agents and travel advisors just take the extra money from the day on which they are coming up. And people pay for it without making any hue and cry about it or making any objections about it. It says, well, visa fee has increased, we have to pay for it, we have to pay for it.
Okay.
So I have never seen any objections coming from any individuals or a group or a travel agent.
No, because individuals, even if they object, they can't really change this. That's not my question. You and I can't sit and object and change that. But what it can do is, it can change consumer patterns. That's my question. Do you see that happening?
Consumer patterns, yes, definitely they will look at it. If you see this one, when it comes to the traveling, now the major European countries, America, UK, has changed. And now people are going to the countries where people has never thought of that they will go to, like neighboring countries. Probably they will go to Vietnams and Thailands and UAEs. In Europe, you don't want to go there, you want to go to Eastern European countries. If I want to visit England, probably I won't go to UK, but probably I can go to an Ireland. So definitely when the visa fees increases, people do look at it that, okay, can I go to somewhere else? Definitely it does changes, and the people do look at it, because in rupees terms, it turns out to be quite a big significant amount.
It's a significant amount when you convert it into our INR.
Yeah. Tonight actually I'm flying. With the road to internationals, we are flying to Baku, Azerbaijan. Why we have chosen that one? Because the fees are very reasonable.
That's a fair point. I'll have to leave it there. Thanks much for speaking to me. The fact is that at the end of the day, 13% is a very significant visa hike. It will impact consumer patterns, both whether it is for those who have discretionary travel and those who don't have discretionary travel, like in the case of students and skilled workers. On that note, a quick break. We come back on the other side with lots more. The neighborhood that we are in right now, you take what's happening around us, whether it's Bangladesh or some other countries, there are violent revolutions that are taking place, all in an effort towards democracy. How do you view that, especially in the context of Bhutan's history being completely opposite of that, and you have the advantage of history, apart from, of course, leadership lessons?
So this is exactly the point I've been trying to make, and especially to our own people. Let's treasure what we have, and especially to the youth of Bhutan. In our region, whether it's India, Bangladesh you just mentioned, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, some places don't even have democracy yet. But wherever there's democracy, even in India, it was a product of bloodshed, of sacrifice, of revolution. In Bhutan, it was a product of enlightened leaders imposing it on a reluctant people in a time of peace and prosperity, unprecedented stability. And this makes Bhutanese democracy, Bhutan's democracy, absolutely unique.
Absolutely, sir, it does. Which brings me to ask you about the fact that many people around the world feel that there are Western leadership styles and then there are, Asian or, Eastern leadership styles, given the fact that the socio-economic and cultural contexts are very different. How do you view those thoughts, and do you think there is a mid-path possible?
I'm not an expert in leadership. If anything at all,
I'm asking in the context of culture, sir, in the cultural conditions.
I am a student of leadership, but truth be told, I'm a public servant, a servant to my king and my people. But values and culture must influence people. Values and culture, by extension, will influence leadership styles. But remember, when I talk of leadership, I'm not really just talking about leaders of nations. It's about communities. It's about small organizations, businesses, families, and most importantly, self. And in what we call, what I have termed enlightened leadership, this is based on Eastern values of timeless wisdom, of courage, compassion, and most importantly, of having to be driven by a sense of selfless service.
On India Global, we now turn attention to US President Donald Trump, who's set to unveil what's expected to be the reciprocal tariffs come 2nd of April, the most expansive set of tariffs that he'll come out with, because it's going to be called Liberation Day. Why? Because he's going to liberate the American economy from what he said were unfair tariffs that were stifling American manufacturing for decades. Now, impact of this is going to be very significant. Nations that will be targeted as Canada, Mexico, whole host of other, China, whole host of other nations, and India as well, who's actually been called tariff king in the past by US President Donald Trump in his previous administration. Before I go any further, I want to play out what President Trump said on this, and we come back and talk more about the impact this will have on the Indian economy.
I think this is going to be an amazing, I call it a lot of different names, but it's really, in a sense, it's a rebirth of a country, because how we could have afforded to do what we did, we help everybody, and they don't help us. I really the term I like best probably is the liberation of America. It's the liberation of this country because it's incredible. Look, we have 36 trillion in debt for a reason, and that accumulates over a long period of time. So I think what you're going to be seeing over the next couple of days will be very inspiring to a lot of people.
So what is this Liberation Day going to entail? Let's put out those big questions that we are going to try and find answers to in the broadcast. First up, are reciprocal tariffs part of Trump's economic statecraft? At the end of the day, are these just measures of give and take? That he announces tariffs, he wants something in return, and there is a midway that he finds. Next question, how will Indian industry be impacted by these higher tariffs? You're talking about very substantial amount, 20% over and above those that have been layered in earlier. Next up, another very important question, which is that fall in domestic ratings as well as dip in US consumer index. Will that temper the tariff impact? Will that force Donald Trump to probably go back on some of these announcements and find some sort of a path that is acceptable to the Americans as well? And lastly, will recent trade talks help India address these concerns? There have been trade talks, there's a possibility of a trade pact. How much of that is going to really help us cushion the impact? Let's get in an economist, a trade expert with us, as well as we have Professor Andrew Latham as well as Mr. Khan to talk more about this. Andrew, let me start with you. It's Donald Trump is trying to liberate the American economy. He said it's almost like a rebirth of a nation. I want to ask you, how much do you think he's going to come good on the 20% reciprocal tariff threat that he's announced?
Well, I think there will definitely be tariffs imposed. It's unclear yet, even at this late date, exactly what those are going to look like, whether they'll be focused on firms or sectors or countries. It's not quite clear, but there will, my judgment is there will be some tariffs imposed that will affect countries like Canada, countries like India. There's no doubt about that. They'll also affect the United States, by the way. Each one of these tariffs is the equivalent of a tax on the American people, because when you pass on the costs, obviously. I think President Trump is both confused and confusing when it comes to the rationale behind tariffs. Sometimes it's just a negotiating tactic.
Apparently, Andrew, there is buzz that, it could even be millions of tariff brackets that could be announced, slicing and dicing them. And none of that, of course, is clear right now. Even the administration is not clear as to which way it will go. Is this indicative of the fact that there is still back and forth that is happening on the tariff hike?
I think there's probably back and forth within the administration. This is not like Trump 1.0. They're mostly loyalists, but there's some pushback against tariffs. And again, he's confused about why he wants tariffs. Does he want to build a tariff wall to onshore or reshore all of these firms and farms around the world so that they all operate within the United States? Sometimes he makes those noises. Sometimes he talks about tariffs as a way of replacing the income tax that can generate enough revenue to support the federal government, as it did back in 1913, when, by the way, the federal government was basically the military and the post office and nothing else. And that's not the case today. So when he refers back to some of these historical presidents and secretaries of the Treasury and whatnot, he misses the point, which is that this is 2025, not 1913.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the India aspect as well. And let's play that graphic. Let's put that out full frame for our viewers to know the impact that we are talking industry-wise. There are, of course, several categories there. Some are going to be impacted more than others. Of course, there is the processing food sector, there is the dairy product sector, alcohol, because he spoke on at length about whiskey being a key aspect, animal products. These are areas which will be impacted very significantly. Mr. Khan, what do you think are India's options in the backdrop of this tariff impact?
Thanks. It's very clear that here is a very strong statement that the US president is making. And he is making it very deliberately and very plainly. He's saying that, look, I am going to impose tariff, and it's up to you now to respond. He realizes that there is a stake that India has in terms of its exports, particularly exports in the primary sector, which does impact a lot of small exporters from India. Therefore, the pressure will be very high on the Indian government to ensure that these sectors that are doing relatively better than others, which is, we are the world's largest meat exporter now. And therefore, there will be some pressure to ensure that such high tariffs are not brought in. So, so India will be trying to ensure that some of those tariffs are not as high as the US wants it to be, or
there could be some possibility
of
negotiation. Okay, Andrew Latham, then let me ask you this, which is that, there are these Liberation Day tariffs, then there are the Venezuelan oil tariffs, then there is the Russian oil tariffs, sanctions, all layered one over the other. Do you think there is a possibility of finding some sort of a middle ground on a country-wide basis? Like, do you think trade talks for America are now going to be bilateral, where somebody gets a relief in some segment, somebody gets a relief in another segment?
Maybe. I would say a couple of things in response to that, one of which is that it's clear that the post-World War II Western liberal, now called rules-based international order, when it comes to free trade, is going out the window. It's the end of an era, I think, is one thing I would say about that. The other thing I would say is that I think Trump, in his own mind, and I try not to inhabit that space because it's scary, but I think there's a dialectic, there's a tension there. On the one hand, I think it is a negotiating tactic for him on a country-by-country, maybe even sector-by-sector basis. On the other hand, I think in his heart of hearts, he really believes that if he builds a high enough tariff wall around Fortress America, all kinds of companies, Indian companies, Canadian companies, Chinese companies even, will have to relocate their farms and their firms within Fortress America. And again, I think that bears no relationship to the economic realities. But the scary thing for me is it's the end of the post-World War II liberal era, which after the license and quota raj in India signed up to that project. China signed up to that project. Russia for a while signed up to the project. But the project is dead.
Mr. Khan, there have been trade talks that India has held with America in recent times. There's been a lot of positive movement on some of those thorny issues. Do you expect some of these concerns on both sides to be addressed and the tariff impact to be minimized?
Yes, there have been, but there seems to be now some sort of an impasse on these issues. And over the last couple of months, one hasn't seen too much of improvement on that regard. And therefore, now it is going to be a very tough time for India particularly, because it is going to try and leverage everything that it has, especially its geographical proximity to China, its ability to be an alternative to China. That's what India really has up. Other than that, India is certainly a problematic issue for Trump, because we do have very high tariffs on US imports in India. And that's what he's been talking about constantly.
I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining me today on India Global. Bottom line, viewers, is that as far as these tariffs are concerned, three things are going to be very important. Point number one that I feel is that Donald Trump is now going to have negotiations on trade on a bilateral basis. It's not going to be multilateral anymore. It's going to be can he extract from India? What is it that he can best do to India in terms of exceptions? Likewise for Canada, likewise for China. That's the first thing that's going to happen. Second is Trump regime is not completely, not going to be unaffected by how things are happening in its domestic constituency. US consumer index is falling, so are his ratings. A lot of people are concerned about their job losses because of these high tariffs, and that will play out in how Trump is going to negotiate with companies and countries the world over. I guess it's going to be a middle path that he will try and find out, given the fact that next year is midterms and what he wants is a majority in the House of Republicans as well. On that note, staying with the White House, well, it has now said that it's moving on from the recent controversy when it comes to the Signal Gate. And what is likely to happen is that it's done and over with when it comes to the commercial messaging app Signal, where it declared that the case has now been closed. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Monday that the Trump administration continues to have confidence in National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and that steps had been taken to ensure that the same scenario is not repeated again. She did not elaborate on the kind of measures that have been put in place. This comes after growing calls from lawmakers for a proper probe. But listen in to what the White House press secretary had to say on that.
The President has made it very clear Mike Waltz continues to be an important part of his national security team, and this case has been closed here at the White House as far as we are concerned. There have been steps made to ensure that something like that can obviously never happen again, and we're moving forward. And the President and Mike Waltz and his entire national security team have been working together very well. If you look at how much safer the United States of America is because of the leadership of this team.
Andrew, there isn't much of a probe that's now going to happen when it comes to Signal Gate. Do you think these questions with regard to national security now have been adequately addressed by the administration?
Maybe first steps taken in the right direction. I use Signal, but I don't have top secret security clearance. Apparently, it's a very secure app unless somebody gets hold of your phone, or you include somebody like Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, I think mistakenly in your chat. I'm sure that there have been wrists slapped. I'm sure that there have been lessons learned. But there's a couple of deeper issues, one of which is there needs to be a very secure asynchronous communication system for senior members of the administration. It doesn't exist at the moment. You can't all go into a secure facility every time you want to have a chat. There's got to be some other alternative to that. But the other thing that came across, which is really serious, is the childishness of some of this communication, the lack of seriousness, emojis and all of that kind of thing. It really made them look bad. And then finally, just quickly, they really handled it badly. They should have just said, oops, we made a big mistake. It will never happen again. But rather than that,
you think the handling of the situation could have been better. But I want to ask you this. The fact is that it also raised concerns about whether this is going to escalate into seeking more than just answers from Mike Waltz. That was one question that was particularly asked again and again. But do you think now, right now, his job, his place in the administration is secure?
I do. I think they're drawing a line under it for obvious political reasons. If he were going to get turfed, I think he would have been fired by now already. So I think he's pretty safe in the short term. Nobody is safe in the Trump administration. You cross one line and you're out, kind of thing. But the Trump administration wants this to blow over and is doing everything it can, on one hand, to make it blow over, but then they've handled it really badly in terms of denying that it ever happened, for example. This should have been framed as lessons learned. We will never do this again. Instead, it was framed as it never happened.
Nothing really happened. Nothing really happened. Yeah. That's how it was framed. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks much, Andrew, for joining in as always. And on that note, a quick break. We come back with more on the other side.
Children affected by the war in Ukraine still need our help. Hospitals, homes and schools have been destroyed. Energy supplies cut off. Families are still displaced from their homes. UNICEF is working for all children affected by the war in Ukraine, providing clean water, family hygiene kits and safe spaces to rest, learn and play. To find out how you can help, search UNICEF Ukraine online or text Ukraine to 84901. In my years reporting on war, I've seen its impact on children. But I've seen how UNICEF makes a difference day by day. £25 could help provide emergency supplies like safe water, maternity kits, or essential vaccines. Search UNICEF Ukraine or text Ukraine to 84901 and help children caught up in this terrible war today.
I'm a simple man, but now I'm in my 50s, things are getting a little more complicated. Retirement's peeking around the corner, and I wanted to make sure my family would be really looked after if anything happened to me. That's why I decided to learn more about over 50s life insurance from Cover Today. They're the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period. Unlike other insurers who could make you wait up to 2 years, with Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one. And you're covered for the whole of your life. Plus, unlike other things in life, the price never goes up. Learning more couldn't be simpler. Go online or talk to their friendly UK team in just one phone call.
Cover Today are the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period and no annoying trips to the doctors either.
Now I'm with Cover Today, I can get on with something much more interesting.
Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card. To find out more about Cover Today, call our friendly UK team on 0808 143 4774 or visit covertoday.co.uk.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements or for some of life's big moments. Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes.
Discover the finest quality made-to-measure window dressings delivered direct to your door. Shop now for 30% off selected products at blindsdirect.co.uk.
You ever thought about yours?
Funeral? Yeah.
Flowers, service.
Everyone there. The more the merrier.
Even your ex, Mark? It sounds a bit mad, but I think I want to be buried with these.
Scatter you where?
I think here.
Yeah, it's your day. You have what you want.
What about you with your ex, Sue? Which one?
Start your plans. Talk to Co-op Funeral Care.
Iran has lodged a complaint with the United Nations Security Council over US President Donald Trump's threat to bomb the country if it didn't come to an agreement with Washington over its nuclear program. This comes after Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini vowed the US would receive a strong blow if it acts on Trump's bomb threat. This report tells you the exact story and where things are right now between Iran and the US. Iran has issued a chilling ultimatum. If attacked, it threatens to go nuclear. A top advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has warned that Tehran will have no choice but to arm itself with nukes if the US or its allies strike. This warning comes just hours after US President Donald Trump ramped up the pressure, threatening bombing and more sanctions unless Iran agrees to a new nuclear deal.
I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not prefer that.
Khamenei, in a fiery speech, vowed that any attack would trigger a strong counterattack. Revolutionary Guard commander has issued a direct threat, pointing to US military bases surrounding Iran, warning that American forces are within striking distance.
امریکایی‌ها در منطقه حداقل در اطراف ایران 10 پایگاه دارن. 50,000 نفر نیرو هم دارن. یعنی در یک اتاقک شیشه‌ای نشستن. کسی که تو اتاقک شیشه‌ای هست سمت کسی سنگپرانی نمی‌کنه.
Iran has now taken its protest to the UN, calling Trump's remarks reckless and belligerent, and warning of swift and decisive retaliation if the US or Israel attacks. Khamenei's rhetoric is only escalating.
هم وظیفه دینی است، هم وظیفه اخلاقی است، وظیفه انسانی است. همه وظیفه دارن در این راه کار کنن، تلاش کنن برای اینکه این موجود شریر رو، این موجود جنایتکار رو از این منطقه حذف کنند.
Yet behind the threats, quiet diplomacy continues. Oman is reportedly mediating indirect talks between Washington and Tehran. While Trump insists negotiations are underway, Iran refuses direct engagement under military threats. With both sides trading ultimatums, the Middle East stands on the edge. Ridhima Kedia, Bureau Report, NDTV World. Well, from one saber rattling to another, it's now time to take a look at what China has been up to, which is large-scale military drills around Taiwan. Once again, it's accusing its leaders of being separatists and parasites who are pushing the island into the war scenario. The drills have been accompanied by fresh propaganda campaigns. So why is it that the PLA is launching these drills right now? What's the provocation? What's the ultimate messaging? Let's get in. Pramit Pal Chaudhary joining us to talk more about what could be the implications of this. He's the head of South Asia at Eurasia Group. Pramit, good to have you on the show. Talk to us about the rationale behind conducting these drills right now, the trigger.
So, as you know, it has been a common practice by China to effectively try to negate or undermine Chinese sovereignty with military exercises, fighter aircraft, flyovers, and so on. This is unusual, both in terms of the size of the exercise, but also, as you said, the timing. In this case, the timing seems to be directly related to the president of Taiwan making a speech in last month, President Lai, where he criticized China, and he spoke about 17 countermeasures that Taiwan would take over what he saw as attempts by China to undermine Taiwan through covert means, including things like supporting local politicians, interfering in the media, social media attacks, and so on. And this seems to have triggered a decision by Beijing to respond. So while I don't think it's unusual for them to carry out such exercises, the size of the exercises is very clearly linked, I think, to President Lai's speech.
And Pramit, while some of these exercises have been happening with alarming regularity and consistency, what one seems to suggest is, one thinks is that they are now they're escalating from the previous round, isn't it? And that is, I think, a more worrying pattern or a trend.
Correct. And we're seeing what I'd call gray zone warfare taking place. In this case, for example, China used over 20 warships, itself a reasonably large, an unusually large number. But it also brought in Coast Guard vessels and members of its maritime militia, which are effectively armed fishing vessels, which are theoretically not military. But China is now basically, should we say, erasing the distinctions between these various types of maritime capacity and treating them all as a unified whole. If this escalates globally, this will be an enormous problem because the number of ships inside its maritime militia and its Coast Guard run into the tens of thousands, much larger than the regular Navy. So yes, this is an unusual degree of escalation. And I think it is helped by the fact that the United States, Taiwan's primary backer and military supporter, is, should we say, diverted by President Trump's present tariff concerns or battles with the rest of the world.
And I was coming to just that President Trump's administration so far, in its over 2 months tenure, hasn't really focused that much on Taiwan, has it? And is that something that's likely to be a major problem for Taipei?
So we're getting a mixed message. It is a concern in Taipei, very much so. When I speak and spoke of Taiwanese officials, compared to the very overt and strong statements of support they got from President Biden, who at least 3 times warned that if there is an attack on Taiwan, America will respond militarily, even though America militarily and officially does not have that requirement. Trump, in fact, has said quite the opposite. He has publicly said, I think Taiwan stole our semiconductor technology. They need to buy more weapons and to learn to defend themselves, which is, of course, very troubling and would encourage, has a danger of encouraging by Beijing to do these type of exercises or potentially go further. But we have seen the Pentagon chief, Peter Hegseth, tour the Indo-Pacific. We have seen even Trump's officials and aides come to India and make it very clear that the Indo-Pacific is at the heart of their foreign policy. The Atlantic alliance will be demoted. And the Washington Post just had an article that is an internal Pentagon memo about how to defend Taiwan.
All right, that's good to know, but troubling those latest developments are. We leave it there, Pramit. Thanks much for speaking to me on India Global. And on that note, viewers, completely timed out of this edition. Thanks so much for watching.
Right now, UNICEF is supporting millions of children in emergencies around the world. Teams are bringing medical supplies for children in Yemen, clean water and medicines in Afghanistan, healthcare and safe spaces for Ukraine's children. £32 could help provide a health worker with a large first aid kit. Search UNICEF Supplies now or text SUPPLIES to 61145 because your support brings hope for children caught in crisis.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements, new appliances, a car, or for some of life's big moments. So even if you've had problems with credit before, Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes. Evlo, your future in your hands.
Because your brain really matters.
With Post Office Over 50s life cover, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. UK resident 50 to 80, you're guaranteed acceptance. No health checks and from just £1.15 a week. Plus free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Purchase and receive a £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S. Visit postoffice.co.uk/over50s.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Debate on Waqf bill in Parliament tomorrow. The Waqf discussion is to be had for 8 hours. Kiran Rijiju says opposition may approach chair for more time. India bloc leaders hold coordination meet. Kerala High Court refuses to stay screening of Mohanlal Sarar Empuran on BJP leaders' plea, calls it publicity interest. Delhi Law Minister to be booked. Court allows FIR against Kapil Mishra linked to 2020 Northeast Delhi riots. Court says that there are evidences of cognizable offence. Top court cracks down on bulldozer action. Imposes 50 lakh rupees fine on UP authorities. Supreme Court says that demolition is completely illegal. A probe is on the skyscraper collapse in Bangkok. Reports suggest that samples from the site failed tests. Bangkok governor says that 12 bodies have been located today.
Good evening. Southern View comes to you today from the University of Hyderabad. I am Uma Sudhir and we are here coming to you live from the University of Hyderabad that's turned virtually into a battlefield in the last few days with the students on the campus actually demanding a rollback of the proposals of the Telangana government led by Mr. Revant Reddy, who has proposed that 400 acres, that is disputed, should I say, of university land which the government claims belongs to the government, and the University of Hyderabad is saying that no demarcation has actually happened, defining the boundaries. So that kind of contest on who owns the land and what is going to happen with that land, with all these students who are even now filling around this area, actually talking about wanting to save the land because they believe it is university land. They believe this is something they're doing for the future of not just their own university, but also of the city and the country at a time when climate concerns are at their highest. Let's take a look at what happened through the day today in this report. Protests continued on the campus of the University of Hyderabad on Tuesday as unrelenting students demanded that the Revant Reddy government must withdraw its proposal to take over and put on auction a 400-acre land parcel at Kanchagachibowli.
They are destroying this whole greenery campus and building these concrete jungles. And we say that मासूम जानवरों की लेकर जान तुम सजाते हो अपनी मोहब्बत की दुकान.
Detained students union leaders including me and those students who came here in retaliation in protest were beaten, brutally attacked, brutally beaten up with helmets, lathis. Female students were dragged. They were taken away to different police stations.
Completely a movement driven by the students only. That is our land. That is the. If you go to the East Campus, if you see this side, they are doing the bulldozering, and that side there is a department. That is our campus. We are fighting for our campus. We are not fighting for any political agenda. Not outside the campus, not inside the campus.
BJP MLAs who tried to visit the university campus were put on house arrest.
Earlier, when Revant Reddy was PCC president, he has protested against the sale of land by then government TRS. There was a huge land being auctioned by then government, and this man as a PCC president fought against them. Even he has given a letter to the CBI to investigate against the land sale. Today this land is being taken away and sold. Tomorrow they will similarly do this with all the university lands or any other private lands or assigned lands.
The ruling Congress says the BRS and BJP are hand in glove. It alleges that the BJP had not protested when the BRS government had allegedly handed over HCU land to private entities.
KTR is talking about HCU. He is the man who handed over hundreds of acres of land to his Benami, Rameshwar Rao. My home, Vihanga, high-rise building has been erected there. That is the pure land of HCU. Now KTR, Kishan Reddy and Sanjay has to answer.
ఇది మీకు వినబడతలేదా రాహుల్ గాంధీ గారు నేను అడుగుతా ఉన్నా. పర్యావరణ ప్రేమికులు, దేశ స్థాయిలో రాష్ట్ర స్థాయిలో ఉన్నవాళ్ళు, మేధావులు మౌనంగా ఎందుకున్నారని మేము అడుగుతున్నాం. పిల్లలు అడుగుతున్నారు. మీకేం కనబడట్లేదా?
Contradictory claims and counterclaims on who owns the 400 acres of land at Kanchagachibowli, charges and counter-charges between the different political parties on who wants to auction land and sell it off. And beyond all this politics, the ultimate question of whether economic development of an IT park to create jobs will have to necessarily come at an ecological cost. In Hyderabad, with camera person Nagaraju, Uma Sudhir, NDTV. So politics is speaking even as tensions are growing on the campus. As you can see around me, huge numbers of students even now are gathered now late evening. That has not deterred them all day long. Yesterday, the day before, they have all been here and they are all speaking in one voice saying that they want to oppose the move of the Telangana government to take over 400 acres of land in order to what the government says is going to be development of an IT park there. I'm also joined on the show by Mr. Srinivas Reddy Kambam, spokesperson for the Congress. I also have Mr. Sandeep Shastri, Director of Academics, NIT Education Trust, and who's also National Coordinator of the Lokniti Network. And I also have Kajal Maheshwari, someone who has been speaking about the need for green lungs to be taken into account whenever we are talking about urban development as well. First, I'm going to go across to some students here. You have all been protesting here. What is your big demand?
Our big demand, they should stop that nonsense that's going on since 3 days. The bulldozers, they are just destroying everything. They should stop that. That's our demand.
You're a professor here. You have seen HCU have many protests over many years now. this particular protest asking for protecting the fragile ecological system of the Hyderabad University campus?
This is a genuine demand, Uma. I think the people in power has to listen to what students are saying very carefully, because if you look at the way they are planning to build this 400 acres, the layout I have seen, the TGIAC plan, it comes close to the lake. Please have a look at that. So even if you go by the rules of Hydra, which they have been sincerely trying to implement, how can they show a layout which is close to the FTL level? Right? You please go on, media can go and check the maps. So the maps of TGIAC just abuts almost to the water level. And wherever they're building right now, if they plan to build right now that 400 acres, if they build multi-storied buildings, they will generate so much of sewage, our lakes will become cesspools. So
that is a big concern. You are someone who's studying what? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, myself Priyanka Priyadarshini. I'm a PhD scholar. I'm doing my PhD in ecological concern in Hindi literature. So I'll recite a poem and I'll give another my colleagues to talk about. So there is a poem of Naresh Saxena, a prominent Hindi writer, poet. नक्शे में जंगल है, पेड़ नहीं, नक्शे में पहाड़ है, पत्थर नहीं, नक्शे में नदियां हैं, पानी नहीं, नक्शे में देश है, लोग नहीं। समझ ही गए होंगे आप कि हम सभी एक नक्शे में रहते हैं और तफरीह की जगह नहीं है यह। मुझे लगता है एक दिन तमाम नक्शों को मोड़कर जेब में रख लेगा ये मसखड़ा और चलता बनेगा। तो हमारी लड़ाई बस अपने जंगल को बचाने की है जो सच में हो, नक्शों में ना रह जाए।
Priyanka, thank you so much for that. I am actually going to take what the professor said to Mr. Srinivas Reddy, spokesperson of the Congress. 2 points here, Mr. Reddy. One, the concern that what is considered as a forest area or has been called a forest area by the students. I know the government is not calling it a forest area. That is one thing. And your political opponents are saying that why are you auctioning government land? Can't you find another place for development of an IT park if you're talking about economic development? Why are you disturbing the ecological fragility of the university campus that's supposed to be spread over 2,300 acres?
Good evening, Uma. First of all, I would like to take you to the ownership of the land. As of now, the ownership of the land, everybody is saying that this is university land, this is government land. In 2004, February 2004, this bit of land, in survey number 25 of the Kancha-Gachibowli village, which is now being the bone of contention here, was exchanged for another bit of land in Gopanpalli village in survey number 36 and 37 of Gopanpalli village. I can show you the copies of the same, which those were already signed by the registrar at that point of time. In the presence of the registrar at that point of time. So there is no such thing as university land over here. It is government land. The Supreme Court has decided on that. Anything we talk against the Supreme Court again amounts to contempt of court here. The court has decided that it is government land. Second aspect here is that we are saying that it is a forest land. Forest land, it is not mentioned anywhere that it is forest land. It is, if you see the revenue records, it is mentioned as Kancha government land, if you see that. So even in the revenue records, it is clearly shown as a government land here. So definitely there is no scope of destroying any forest. There is no reserve forest out here or anything of that sort. Government wants to develop a IT corridor, mixed use IT corridor, and in the sustainable development policy by, for generating employment, generating revenue, and